and call this meeting of the Redding Consortium for Educational Equity to order. This is a full body meeting. And we do have a lot of folks who are online this evening. And let's see, we are going to go ahead and go to the next slide. I think actually before we do any business, you're still on the welcome. We, of course, are in a really interesting phase of the consortium, as you will hear a lot about tonight, getting into a lot of detail about how our planning process is proceeding. We'll also be talking about our spending plan. And with the transition that came after our big meeting and decision in December, we are also seeing some shifts in some of the positions on the consortium itself. I'm sure we'll continue to see a little bit of turnover in the next little bit of time as we sort of rebalance for all of the work ahead. And so I did want to take a moment to do a quick acknowledgement of one particular role that's turning over. We have 2 seats specifically for educators in Wilmington, and we have had one of those positions occupied by Dr. Dania Woods, who I'm not sure was a doctor when she first joined us back in 2019, and is currently the AP at Johnson Elementary. And we were chatting about this yesterday, remembering the very, very first meeting of the Redding Consortium. I know a few of you were a part of that, where we were like meeting at that DEMA facility in Newcastle. Anyway, that was a long time ago. So she has come a long way. She is now an administrator. And so she has very graciously chosen to rotate off of the consortium and to give her educator spot, or well, with Matt and I's approval, of course, appoint to the roles. But she recommended a wonderful Wilmington educator who has joined us today. Ms. Janine Clark, who I have known for a long time, because fun fact, you were my daughter's very first formal educator in the, what was it, 2-year-old class? No, they were.
I think it was younger than that.
Like 1-year-old classroom at the Central YMCA, and you helped her get through her biting phase, so I thank you for that. And so I would like you just to introduce yourself a little bit, Janine, if you don't mind. Let's make sure we get a microphone to you and welcome you to the Redding Consortium for Educational Equity.
Thank you. And a big microphone. Jan, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Janine Clark. I am a 3rd grade teacher at Warner Elementary in the Red Clay Consolidated School District. I'm honored and glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to sharing the views of the educators, for the ones that usually come and talk to me and the ones that don't, just so that we can get their insight in this process.
That's wonderful. And you're a 3rd grade educator now, but you've been, as I mentioned, you've been in early childhood spaces.
Early
You've been
child care, paraprofessional for longer than I've been teaching.
Yeah.
But it's all encompassed the same. Yeah.
I'm very happy to have you.
Thank you.
So you might see more of that in our next meeting, but just very excited to announce that change. So I think we have a quorum, right? Seems like we're pretty solid. And also, hold on before I move on, let me thank Dr. Woods, who I know is on. I don't know if she can say anything or if we can see her or anything like that, but I just wanted to acknowledge her, thank her for her long tenure in service, and she knows that there is probably more work we're gonna find for her to do.
She is on. You want me to ask her to unmute?
Sure, if she would like.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to serve on the Lewis Redding Consortium. And as Senator Lockman was sharing, I was a classroom teacher, I believe transitioning from Christina to Red Clay at the time. And it's just been awesome to be able to be a part of the work, capturing the voices of our educators, doing great work for our students. And I look forward to continuing to be a part of the work in some capacity, as Senator Lockman shared. But you all are definitely in good hands when it's official with Ms. Clark. But thank you for the opportunity to serve through all of these years.
No problem. Very great. Thank you again. You can give her a round of applause. And I think that does make it official, actually, Dr. Wood, so you are off the hook, and Jean's gonna be picking up your votes tonight. Okay, and speaking of votes, we are going to move on to the meeting minutes. You should have received those. Oh, we have people clapping on Zoom, that's so sweet. And because we have a quorum, I would welcome a motion and a second for us to approve those minutes from our last full body meeting.
Approve the minutes.
All right, motion from Matt Den and a second from Simone Silver and Dr. Smith. Since we're using our full titles. And so I think with that, we can go ahead and do roll call on minutes.
Elaine's getting me a mic, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Do we have an extra mic?
Very well.
I saw a couple of them. Oh, she's got it. Yeah, you don't need to.
Thank you.
Right, ready for roll call? Ready for roll call? You, man. Aaron Bass.
Oh, I mean, I think I have to make sure people can unmute themselves. Be honest.
Approved.
Thank you. Ayana Khan,
Approved.
Dr. Simone Silver. Yes. Janine Clark,
I'm gonna abstain.
Superintendent Joyner,
Yes.
Superintendent Green,
Yes.
Senator Buxton, Superintendent Menzer,
Yes.
Mayor Carney,
Yes.
Superintendent Jones,
Yes.
Kendra Brown,
Yes.
Superintendent Lawson,
Yes.
Margie Lopez Waite,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cabrera, Maria Matos,
Yes.
Matt Den,
Yes.
Representative Chakosha,
Yes.
Ray Jones Avery,
Yes.
Ray Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Stephanie Ingram, Teron Williams,
Yes.
Tika Hartsock,
Yes.
Senator Lockman.
Yes.
18 yes. One abstain.
All right, so moving right along, we actually have an agenda shift, as you could maybe tell. Representative Chapocha will be delivering the process update, and he is currently in transit. So we are actually going to jump to the budget update. And we do have an action item on that to vote to approve it after discussion. So I'm going to hand the mic to Matt Den to lead us through the budget for fiscal year 27 spending plan update.
Great, thanks, Senator. I will try to talk fast because I've made some verbal commitments about our adjournment time today in connection with the 76ers game. So I apologize if I'm talking faster than usual. Tonight, we're discussing and hopefully voting on our recommendations to the state about how the state should spend $10.2 million that's included in the governor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2027. That fiscal year starts July 1st of this year. And then once we've approved a proposed budget under the epilogue language that goes with the governor's proposed budget bill, our proposal then has to be approved by the Office of Management and Budget, by the Controller's Office, and by the co-chairs of the Joint Finance Committee. So this is really the first step. I think that recommending these programs is some of the most important work that we do. We've been debating these larger redistricting issues for literally years. And in the meantime, an entire generation of students has been moving through our schools, and many of them are attending schools with unacceptably low outcomes that really place an unfair cap on their opportunity to have success in school and in life. You think about it, kids who were in kindergarten when the Redding Consortium first started its work in 2019. They are halfway through middle school now, and they will be in high school by the time that any redistricting proposal that we make is approved and actually in operation on the ground. And even kids who are starting kindergarten this year, they'll be finishing elementary school by the time any long-term work that we do is complete. So these proposals are for those kids that are moving through the system while we discuss these issues, and to whom we really have an obligation to help now. If we can go on the next slide, just in terms of why we're talking about this now when the legislature hasn't even passed the proposed budget yet. For many of these recommendations that you see in your package, as is usually the case with our recommendations, they require that RFPs be prepared by the Department of Education, posted by the Department of Education, bids get received and selected by the Department of Education. All of those things have to happen before any of these programs can start. And for some of these programs, they're best started as close as possible to the beginning of the school year in September. So in the past, DOE has been willing to start preparing RFPs once we go through this step of the process, even before all those other approvals have been done, so that they can be in a position to put them out and start receiving bids much more quickly once things are formalized. So that's why we're hoping that we can get some resolution on our part of this tonight, so that DOE can do what it's done in the past and get started on the RFPs, and we can have some of these programs started as close as possible to the beginning of the next school year in September. On the next slide, just a quick background for some of the newer consortium members or members of the public who may be new to this process. Redding, as I mentioned, was created in 2019. By 2020, it became pretty clear that the process of recommending a formal redistricting plan was going to be very time consuming. And we had those concerns that I talked about a moment ago about kids moving through the school system in the interim. So we decided in 2020 to make a series of recommendations to the Governor and General Assembly about steps that could be taken in the interim to support some of these kids who are attending some of our more challenged public schools now. And the idea behind these recommendations is that, number one, they would be helpful to these kids in real time. And that, number two, they might also be a good testing ground for programs that might later become part of a more formal Redding Consortium redistricting proposal. So we issued a formal report in December of 2020 that asked the Governor and General Assembly to fund a number of proposals, and the General Assembly ended up approving $10.2 million in funding in its fiscal year 22 budget. And if you go back and you look at that December 2020 report, which is now 5+ years old, you will see that the priorities that are listed in that report from 2020 pretty much line up with the priorities that we still have today. And if you go on to the next slide, you can see some of them listed from the 2020 report. And the structure is also very similar. When Senator Lockman and I met with the Joint Finance Committee in 2021, they asked us if we would like the Redding Consortium to be the body that actually distributed these funds. And we told them no, that Redding Consortium is not really set up or staffed to be the body that issues RFPs, that reviews RFPs, or that monitors grant recipients. So in almost every category where we make recommendations, the Department of Education gets the funds in question and has the responsibility for all those things, for issuing RFPs, determining successful bidders, monitoring grant performance. On the other side of this slide, you can see that over the 5 years that that the state has been generous enough to continue appropriating that $10.2 million, the Joint Finance Committee has added additional requirements to the reappropriation of those funds, including that requirement I mentioned at the outset that all those other entities sign off on our recommendations. And the epilogue language in the current proposed bill also requires that at least $1 million of that proposed spending relate to the redistricting process. And we've tried to satisfy that in the plan that we have for you to review tonight by including a number of pilot programs that have been reviewed by our discretionary recommendations committee as potential components of a final Redding Consortium redistricting proposal in that proposed budget. So let's turn to the actual suggested budget proposal that you received with your meeting materials. And these budget materials were also posted on the consortium website. They're posted on the state public meeting website, and folks who are watching on Zoom can still get access to them there. And the proposals for the use of the newly appropriated $10.2 million in state funds fall into four areas. One is renewal of existing programs that have been funded in prior years. The second category is those pilot programs that I mentioned a moment ago to implement some potential components of a final redistricting proposal that we might make. The third is a reading tutoring program that has been advocated by some of the members of the consortium. And the fourth is funds to go directly to the Department of Education to help better monitor the grant funds that it's distributing. And as you saw further into the packet, there are also some carryover funds from ongoing projects. And as you may remember, we discussed some bigger picture items with respect to those funds at a prior meeting. And this proposal that you have in front of you tonight reflects some of the feedback that we got at that prior meeting, in particular, a desire from consortium members to continue trying to put in place the equity data dashboard and a desire to fund a new cohort of students in the Boost program for middle school and high school students. So if we can go to the slide about outside school time programs. First item on the list is outside school time programs. There you go. This has been at the core of our recommendations since 2021. And as you can see from the quote at the top of the slide, wraparound services generally were highlighted in our social drivers landscape analysis that we had prepared as a part of the redistricting proposal that we made. With all that said, if you compare the amount dedicated to outside school time programs in this year's proposal to past years, the amount is smaller than in prior years. And in spite of that, it's going to serve more schools. And that proposal to have a lower per school allocation was made based on what's now 5 years of experience with these outside school time grants as they were originally proposed in 2021, based on some conversations that we had with Joint Finance Committee members about trying to ensure that our pilot programs are sized in a way that they actually can be realistically replicated in a larger number of schools if they're successful. And based on some recommendations from the Discretionary Recommendations Committee, also available on the website, about national best practices in terms of getting the best possible academic outcomes from these outside school time programs. So our thinking with all of this is that we ought to try to narrow down these outside school time program RFPs, focus them more specifically on academic outcomes, and not try to also incorporate student health services into them. That just proved to be a very, very expensive and complicated part of them the last time around. So what you see is funding per program that comes out to about, the Controller's Office estimates about $750,000 per school annually, as opposed to what was $1.9 million per school under the prior year's proposal that included student health center programs. That's about a 60% cost reduction per school. It's also more replicable, obviously, with a lower per school cost. And for the purposes of this budget proposal, it allows us to propose doing outside school time programs in 5 schools rather than 3, and still have a much lower total dedicated to outside school time programs than we had in prior year's budget proposals, which allows us to fund more of the newer programs that we're proposing this year. Next item on the next slide is the $3.7 million that we have recommended over multiple years for what are known as Redding early childhood classrooms. And these are funds that are used to provide full day pre-K services to children in the ECAP program, and also to provide funds that allow for higher compensation for the frontline early childhood workers that are serving these students, to try to keep them in those jobs and to reduce the turnover rate among quality frontline educators. At this point, this $3.7 million is really more of a bookkeeping entry than it is a proposal, because the state has decided to implement the Redding model in all of its ECAP classrooms. So if we were to recommend not spending that money, the state would very likely say, thanks for your recommendation, but we're spending it anyway. It's part of the larger ECAP budget now. But it's been a very, very successful pilot, as evidenced by the fact that the state's now doing it in all of its ECAP classrooms. Also recommended for renewal is the Redding Scholarship Program at $710,000. That is a very popular program that has been in place for some time that provides scholarships for teachers and staff working in high poverty schools. We have been increasing support for it year over year to try to meet demand. There was actually some carryover funding remaining this year, so we're recommending funding it at the same level as the past year because not all the money that was appropriated last year was used. Next slide, next item on the list. And I'm doing these sort of in descending order from how they're listed on the summary on the first page. Is for a new program that has been discussed at multiple meetings as a starting point for what could become part of a larger Reading final redistricting plan. And that is trying to replicate in a low-income Delaware public school the type of highly specialized program that is targeted at students with language-based learning disabilities that really is currently only available at private schools in and around Delaware, such as the College School at the University of Delaware, Centerville-Layton, the Pilot School, schools like Woodland School in Pennsylvania and Legacy School in Maryland. These private school programs are, as a practical matter, unavailable to most low-income families given the tuitions. We had multiple meetings with people, including past and present leaders at some of these schools, about how this might be done in a traditional public school setting so that this programming could also be available to families that can't afford to pay the tuition at some of these private schools. And their recommendation was that we try to start it in a single classroom in the first year and then expand it slowly to 2 classrooms in a second year, 3 classrooms in a third year. So this budget estimate that you see is an averaged number for what the average cost would be over a 3-year period, because we didn't want to fund it for one classroom the first year and then come back next year and have to scramble to try to find operating funds to fund it in the second classroom. I want to be very transparent about one part of this funding proposal. There are really complicated legal issues that are involved in setting up a program like this in a way that complies with all the federal laws and all the state laws that apply to kids with disabilities. It has to be done the right way. And even if it's done perfectly, there's always the possibility that some folks are going to challenge the way that it's been done. And that can get expensive for school districts that have to pay out of pocket for law firms by the hour to represent them in these things. So we were concerned when talking about this that school districts might not bid on this proposal if there was the prospect that they would end up having to pay out tens or hundreds of thousands more dollars in legal fees to deal with setting it up and the possible challenges to it. So the state attorney general has agreed, if the state funds it, to hire a deputy attorney general whose primary focus would be this program, helping to properly design it, helping to properly implement it, and then providing any legal services that were necessary to defend it being set up free of charge to whatever school district was the successful bidder on it. And if all went well and nobody challenged it, then they would use that deputy attorney general to do the many other things that the state attorney general's office uses civil deputies to do. But about $191,000 of that $665,000 is the salary and benefit cost of having an experienced assigned deputy AG. And again, when we discuss this, the superintendents and charter school leaders who are here can, correct me if I'm wrong, but the thought was that we were unlikely to have bidders on this if we didn't somehow account for the potential legal fees that were involved. Working my way through the list and continuing to try to talk quickly. Another pilot program that has been discussed by the Discretionary Recommendations Committee to establish more gifted and talented programs in high poverty schools, similar to the programs that are currently run by the Brandywine School District in some of its schools. And as you can see in the package that you got, this proposal also includes a number of proposed safeguards, some of which are based on current practices in Brandywine to ensure that access to these programs is inclusive and that access is fair. These programs would be offered in high poverty schools. They could either be available for districts that don't currently have programs like this, or for a district that did have a program to expand it as long as the school met the criteria set for being a low-income school. One of the consortium members, when looking at this proposal, mentioned to me, and I think it's a good point, that when that part of creating new programs like this one, and like the language-based learning disability program that we just talked about, should also be really carefully evaluating the impact that these programs have versus more traditional programs that the districts already may have in place. And I think that's absolutely right. We tried to set up a similar process for the outside school time programs and the RFPs that we issued for them. And I would expect that any RFPs that we issue for this type of program, for the language-based learning disabilities program, that would be part of the RFP, that the impact be carefully measured, because that's part of the point of doing pilot programs. Next slide, next item on the list is renewal of the middle school and high school graduation coaching initiative that we have funded in past years. As it was referred to in the past by the school districts as the Boost program. We had initially, a few years ago, voted to just support this program for 1 year. And it was so well received by the superintendents and school districts that we ended up funding it subsequently on a year-by-year basis. This year, the first cohort of students will be graduating from high school. And when we first discussed our budget recommendations earlier this year, one of our members brought up that it would be a good use of our funds to start this program over again, because it had been so successful and so well received by the school districts. So this money would go to starting a new cohort of ninth graders that would once again receive these services as they made their way through high school. And also part of the thinking was, some of the folks at the meeting today have mentioned that so many of our initiatives are focused on elementary school age students and pre-K age students, that it was important that we continue to maintain some focus on middle school and high school age students as well. Next item on the list is a new program that is based on suggestions that Mayor Carney has made for much of the time that he's been a member of the consortium, for us to support an infusion of tutors, reading tutors who are specifically trained in science of reading techniques into some of our high poverty Wilmington elementary schools. And these types of tutoring services have been provided in a more limited way in the past. But this level of funding would be a significant expansion of our use of these types of tutors. And they would be implementing best practices in terms of science of reading, in terms of helping some of our students at some of our schools that have extremely low reading scores right now to catch up. So I'm at least excited at the prospect of us being able to really invest in that initiative. Nearing the end here, next item, $240,000 that we pay annually to Delaware State and the University of Delaware for staff support. That amount is directed in the epilogue language that goes with the budget bill. And then you'll see finally, in terms of new items, we've included $50,000 that we want to recommend to go to the Department of Education to be able to contract with someone to do more intensive monitoring of the spending of the funds that we recommend and of the impact of those funds on the ground. And we've publicly expressed our concern for a couple of years that these funds aren't getting enough scrutiny from DOE. And we thought that it was incumbent on us to make it possible for DOE to do that. And so we're recommending that DOE get a specific appropriation to contract with a person who's directly tasked with doing this type of grant monitoring, and in particular impact monitoring. And this applies to, again, to the types of programs that I mentioned a little earlier that we'd be doing for the first time. So finally, jumping to the very end of your packet, you'll see there are 3 ongoing lines for which no new funds are being recommended, but where we're suggesting a reallocation of carryover funds. That's based in large part on a revised estimate from the Department of Education about the amount of funds that are needed for the equity database. So there's a very small carryover of $29,000 in professional development funds. The 2 categories where there's substantial carryover are support for redistricting planning and the equity data dashboard. And as you can see from the slide, DOE has told us that it can complete the equity data dashboard project for $550,000. So to be safe, we've suggested leaving just under $700,000 in that line and transferring the other $200,000 to be available for any costs that are associated with redistricting planning beyond what's already been spent. And as you'll recall, the consortium has delegated to Senator Lockman and Darrell Green and Ray Jones Avery the administrative authority to authorize spending of those redistricting planning funds. They're required to report back to us about how they're spent, and they in turn use DOE's services when they need legal advice or other types of technical assistance about spending that money. So that is that's the entire proposal, which again you have in front of you in more detailed form on paper. And I think for purposes of discussing it, I'd like to move for the consortium to approve it. And if someone's willing to second the motion, we could discuss it. If people want to vote to change it, we can vote to change it. And obviously happy as part of that conversation to try to answer questions that folks have. But I think a good way of sort of opening the door to talking about it would be me moving to approve it as it is in the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and now we can discuss. So I think there might have been a couple of questions or comments. You know, this is a really important part of the work that we do. So we don't, you know, we want to give it a good once over. So any hands from consortium? I see a couple in here. Shamir? Oh, you've got a mic. Great. Superintendent Green?
Yeah.
Okay. Superintendent
Just to, so the grants for pilot programs would be open for any Reading school though, right? Current, I need identified Reading school, which could be a school, again, charter and or district LEA. So then my question would be from the pilot program, because obviously it's going to inform the broader work around redistricting. How are we looking at alignment, and would it behoove us to look at collaborative pilots? Right. So my thinking around this was, all right, Brandywine has gifted and talented. We offer tag services in Reclay. How would Brandywine's program ultimately inform the broader redistricting effort? Because now the new entity may not necessarily be able to operationalize Brandywine's pilot in the manner in which it is now. So would it make sense for us to look at alignment of, do we all look at talented and gifted citywide, right? And look at it more around a collaborative approach, and that way more children are benefiting from it in a more cohesive way. And then that's ultimately informing a broader kind of, so that was, you know, I think it's a great idea for us to expand. I mean, we, like right now, we have the Wilmington Learning Collaborative actually with supporting expansion of talented and gifted in Reclay. Brandywine has the Brandywine Gifted Program, which is structured different than what we do it. And I also, we have enrichment, so that there are other models to really look at school-wide enrichment models, where you actually provide enrichment opportunities to all students who may not necessarily fall on the gifted, you know, because again, it is a test. So if we're saying that there, I mean, we believe all children have a gift, right? But how do we provide them with exposure through a school-wide enrichment model, which is something, and I'm dating myself now, going back 20 years. When I was an administrator at Bayard, we actually had a school-wide enrichment model where every student, although may not necessarily be receive gifted, talented and gifted services, provide or get access. So just a thought when we think about that. And then the other one with the specialized programs, if none of the districts and or Reading schools, for, you know, for the obvious reasons that you just stated around the legal ramifications, decide to put in for that grant, are we looking to at least have an amendment to the budget to be able to redistribute those funds in another area in the event that they go unspent?
So the answer to the second question would be yes. I mean, if no one wants the money, then we would have to vote to That's a redistributed. The first question was kind of two questions, one of which was, could multiple districts, jointly put in for this? And the second being, could it be something that structurally is different from the gifted and talented classroom model? The short answer being, we can vote to do whatever people want. Just for my opinion, the multiple districts, my answer personally would be, not only should multiple districts be able to do that, but I think that's preferable. And part of the cost that is built into this is the cost of transporting students that might, assuming that there's space available in the programs that might currently be, else in a different school and want to choice in. So if there's multiple districts, then the cost is probably about the same, for the same size program. But we're making it available to a broader range of students. So I think that would be a good change. In terms of the structure of the program, and again, this is just, I'm just offering my opinion. Part of the reason that that it was put in this way was was based upon what I at least heard when Senator Lockman and I were touring the various school districts and other groups that we were out talking to about a redistricting, a consolidated district program and what possible benefits there might be to people who didn't live in the city of Wilmington to a consolidation. And one of the things that we talked about, that I at least perceived there being some pretty positive response to, was the opportunity for students who don't live specifically in Brandywine to have access to the type of programming that students who do live in Brandywine have access to now as part of their, the way that their specific program is structured. And if we are going to, down the road, have the General Assembly approve whatever it is that we put forward, I think part of the thinking is that there have to be components of it that that legislators perceive to benefit students outside the city of Wilmington. So part of the motivation was, again, what I at least heard when we were talking to broader northern Newcastle County about what they perceived as a potential benefit. So my suggestion would be, based on that, to have it structured this way. But it's an open discussion. So if folks think that it ought to be more general, my only suggestion would be, if we are going to make it more general, we need to give the Department of Education some guidance about how they're supposed to wait, if because they need to have some kind of direction from us about how they're supposed to evaluate different proposals that come in.
I was trying to be quiet and talking to Dr. Scott as our DOE representative. If there were any, I don't know if there were any comments that.
I was just gonna say, that's exactly right. We just need to know the parameters of what.
Yeah, I think we would just need to know the parameters of what the programs need to have so that we can plan for it and make sure that we're, as we've done before, work on the RFAs to make sure that they're very clear in the expectations. So. Okay. Mayor Carney, you have a question, and then I know Ayana Khan online will have one afterwards.
Yeah, mine's not really a question, but just an endorsement for, and thanks for the $350,000 for the reading programs for City of Wilmington children. This builds on what we did last summer, which was a pilot program here, mostly for children that attend the Hicks Anderson summer program. And through the North Market Street PAL. So that this funding with 200 students will about double the number that we did last year. This includes after school programs during the school year. And we're trying to, and I would open it up to each of the city school districts to engage with us with children that need that kind of support. We've mostly been reaching out to Pritchett Academy because it's nearby. We're trying to match them with Chase, and their volunteers that are right down the street. So this will go a long way to build on the summer program that we had last year. We will continue to do that this year. The challenge is really getting the children. So if you have a mechanism, summer camp or something where a lot of your children that need this assistance go every day, let us know so that we can get our tutors. These are reading assist tutors. They've been working well in our schools, and this for me should be just kind of the foundation of what we do for children during the summer and after school on reading. So thank you, both chairs.
Thank you. We have two online, and then I'm gonna come back to you, right? Or unless that was building off of, is it a fresh idea? We've got Ayana Khan and Ben
Fresh
Tia.
idea. I just want a point of clarification.
Oh,
Having multiple districts eligible to apply, it's like that now in charter schools. But having a criteria that says applicants are to submit a collaborative and coordinated proposals are not the same thing. So I just want to lift that up, name that.
right.
So I am really in support of the collaborative approach as a criteria, criterion of RSP. So it's a different approach.
And is there a precedent for RFAs that require a collaborative response?
I mean, we've had what were you thinking?
21st century grants require
Community.
Community partnership.
community partnerships, so yes.
Okay, so 21st century grants might be a model.
So, and and again, this is me thinking in a hypothetical, right? Because the WLC currently serves 9 schools. And when we talk about from an evaluatory component, is that an opportunity, let's just say that they were to collaborate and be almost that backbone entity if we're looking, I'm just specifically around gifted programming to kind of drive that work in a more cohesive, and I'm not, again, hypothetical, because I don't know if they have the bandwidth, the capacity to do it, but just generally thinking, again, I'm thinking in a broader context of how would the new district take the learning from the pilot? So I'm not questioning the pilot program itself as much as it is, how are we aligning this to make it scalable? Because then the concern would be, and I'm thinking to the point that was just made, Matt, just not only around this programming, but like you said, given access. Like we have School of the Arts that I'm sure neighboring districts and communities will want access to that programming as well. So this could be something that ultimately, when we look at scaling it to a larger, ability to give families access to that quality programming, it could be something that I think would make logical sense.
Just in terms of the mechanics of it, what I know we've done with prior RFPs was we have asked DOE to, we can simply require absolutely that any school that's applying or school district have a collaborator, so you're not eligible to apply without it. What we've also done is to ask DOE to award additional points when it's evaluating the RFPs to schools or districts that, meet certain other criteria. So we could do either of those. My suggestion would be the latter, just in the event that there is some, individual district or individual school that wants to do it in a different way than others do, so that they're not forbidden from applying, but that there would be preference given to collaborative submissions. But again, that's just my suggestion. The one thing, just to circle back to it, that I do think we need to, settle on is if we want to have it not be limited to a Brandywine type model where there are, separate classrooms, that we give some guidance to DOE about how those types of things ought to be weighted. We don't necessarily need to do that tonight because the RFPs, I would imagine, would not go out until after our next meeting, but it's something that we would have to do at some point, is just to let them know how we want them to evaluate that.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to support what Darrell's saying with respect to working through the DLC because the WLC, because this is a mechanism that includes the whole city of Wilmington.
And I just wanted to reinforce the point before we go to Ayana online. She's been very, very patient, so Tika. I think the intent behind the pilots, I think you said this, but just reiterating in case anyone missed it, is to sort of make the case for what works for inclusion in the actual proposal that we will have coming forward. Because these are things that were discussed in our discretionary recommendations committee that we think could have a real place in that broader proposal for a new district, and we want to start demonstrating success and capturing what's working for use in that proposal. So just wanted to restate that. So Ayana Khan online, I think you had a question or
Yes,
comment?
yeah, I needed clarity. My apologies if I missed it. So it says support from the University of Delaware Biden School, but then it says amounts in the amounts of 156,000 is provided to the University of Delaware Biden School of Public Policy. So I just needed clarification on that because the state of Delaware already gives like 100+ million out of the state's budget to the University of Delaware. So it says support from, and then it says amounts provided to. So just clarity on that.
Sure. So what that line item covers, the 240,000, we have sort of joint staffing support from both University of Delaware and Delaware State University. So all of our lovely folks that make the wheels turn here. And so that's what that is about. We've done that since sort of time immemorial. That was part of, that's actually in our statute in Delaware code that we have the support from those two universities. And I think in those specific amounts is in code, is it not? It's in envelope language. So that's just consistent with how we've been doing it since 2019. And so it's the Institute for Public Administration and representation from Delaware State University work together as like our core administrative team so that we can have meetings and materials and research and all kinds of good stuff that we need.
So that's above the 100+ million that they already get from the state's budget.
I mean, I guess it's a separate contract. Would that be accurate? I'm kind of looking, I mean, I think so like IPA and then the individual from DSU who works with us essentially are providing contracted services. Go ahead, Haley.
I'll just add, so we work for the Institute for Public Administration and we are soft funded. So that means my salary is paid partially from the university staff support that you see. So I'm not getting in addition. There's a lot of money from the state, from UD, but that's not supporting me. It's this and whatever other contracted projects that I'm on, if that helps.
Yeah.
To be transparent.
Yeah, and it's like a center that lives within the university, but is not necessarily connected to I think the funding streams that you're talking about to support the overall.
Yeah,
university.
suppose the larger Biden school is connected, but it doesn't all sort of trickle down in the way that you may think.
Into the institute, yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Tika Hartzog.
Thank you. I want to circle back to piggyback on something that Darrell was stating. And so not necessarily in regards to the gifted and talent programs, but in regards to the specialized programs with the specialists in those classrooms. Each of the LEAs already do have classrooms like that, but I don't believe the charter schools do. So I was curious where I do see a gap associated. And so maybe if there would be an option A, so, charter schools that don't have something designed like that, maybe they were interested in bidding on that, or an option B. So Red Clay has something called itinerant autism support teachers. So for students that may not need a smaller classroom setting or a self-contained type setting, those students may participate in a general education setting. And in Red Clay, like I said, they have the support of an additional autism support teacher over top of whatever other special education services, if they have any of those. But that's not something that Christina has to support those students, nor does Brandywine. And I've been in all three of those districts. So I very much think that if we were going to talk about a program that had equity for students that may not have had those opportunities, I think that would be a good option. So if it was able to be included as an option A of a small specialty designs, like it was already stated, or for people to be able to bid for an option B to support these type of teachers to come in and help students that need that a little bit more specially designed instruction around just certain target areas.
Thanks, Tika. This is, I'm supposed to follow the rules. This is Matt Fenn. Supposed to identify myself. I am. So and you may remember some of this from when we discussed it at the Discretionary Recommendations Committee, but the model that this talks about is a very specific model that these schools use that is very specifically targeted at students that have language-based learning disabilities, and a particular pedagogical model that they use in terms of staffing, different types of training that many teachers and other professionals in the school districts and charter schools right now, frankly, don't have the opportunity to receive. But they're all different private schools, but there are some real commonalities to the model that they use that has been very successful with these students. And part of the model also is trying to have the students that are in the classroom be relatively close in terms of their capabilities and the type of disability, so that they can teach in a classroom setting efficiently and not have to use as much time with individualized instruction for each student. So that's what we are, which is, I think you're absolutely correct that there are separate classrooms in all the school districts for students with disabilities. This is a very specific model that these schools use, that we have heard a lot of desire from parents of kids with language-based learning disabilities that don't have the funds or the opportunity to have them enroll. So I will, and I'm not sure if that's a good explanation of it. And I know Lisa has been involved in some of these discussions and has more of a special education background than I do. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out.
I think Maria Matos, does she still have her hand up?
Yes.
Okay, Maria. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I would venture to say that the money that we're giving to the University of Delaware is above and beyond what the state gives them. So, I mean, I can't prove it, but I bet you it is. But that's not why I raised my hand. I raised my hand. and the staff that's helping us is not getting double pay. That I know for sure. So anyway, what I want to ask the mayor, the mayor, is there a report from the Read Assist from the money that they used last year? Is there an impact report that we can read as to the impact they had on the kids during the summer and during the school year?
Yes, Maria, there is, and what they learned that some percentage, we can get that for you, but some percentage of the students made some progress. And one of the things, the main goal is to make sure kids don't lose ground.
But is there a for example, United Way puts out a reading program. It's called the I think it's the Nick or something. And what is it?
Book
Hook. Yeah. Book Hook. Our kids last year, most of them maintain their reading grade, but a lot of them, like 93%, improve 1 grade and a half during the summer. So I was wondering if Read Assist has some type of report where it tells you this number of kids kept their reading level or improved their reading level with the money that we gave them last year. And where is it? Where can I find it?
Yeah, we'll get it to you. I think I just said that there were some percentage of them improved and none fell back, and some maintained their they were evaluated when they started the summer and when and then when they ended. But the challenge really is getting the students there and every day when they do it, and to get them to come every day. So it's challenging during the summer time to do that. My own experience going out to watch what they did was that the program in Hicks was a little bit different than up at the PAL. The PAL looked more individualized to me, but they're a good partner. They have lots of kids. And the challenge, and again, I throw this out to the people that run the schools, is to make sure that we know the deficits that the children have. That's hard information to share so that we can work collaboratively. I know they did that a couple of years ago down in Seaford with the Boys and Girls Club or whatever it is that's located there, and they were able to share the information, and they actually they didn't use BookNote, but they used some other program like that. Actually, in that case, the schools had one system, and it was different than the system that was used by the nonprofit during the summer, which kind of made no sense. But this is an opportunity. We have the children. It tends to be in a little bit more relaxed setting. We want to expand it during the school year. After school, that gets to be a challenge as well. But we would encourage Brandywine Red Clay to be part of that as well. If you have some mechanism that brings the kids to a place every or most days during the summer.
Yeah, I'd like to invite you during the summer to the LACC so you can see how we do it in partnership with Red Clay and United Way. I would love to bring in Read Assist. That would be an extra pair of hands. But I would like to invite you publicly to come look what we do.
And Maria, to your point, if I could just make my usual disclaimer that this program, like almost all the other ones that are in this proposed budget, will get RFP'd, and there will be opportunities for anyone that wants to seek to do the work to put in for it. And I know Reading Assist has done this programming in the past and has a great reputation, but this will be RFP'd by the by DOE and be an open opportunity. And it's one of the programs I was talking about a little bit earlier, where we're anxious to get the process rolling so that it can start as close as possible to the beginning of the school year.
Oh, my bad. I thought the entire amount would go to Read Assist. Sorry, my misunderstanding.
There you go.
So I think to Mrs. Matos's point, though, that it's accountability through alignment. And so one of the things, to the mayor's point, that actually is happening now with the Seaford Boys and Girls Club, with H. Fletcher Brown, with Frame, LACC, I think there are probably 50, don't quote me on it, but like 50 or so community-based organizations that are hosting summer program that's partnership with Book Nook, Get Delaware Reading, where we do have a data sharing agreement. And the whole goal is to ensure that during school, after school, out of school time is connected. And so even with the students who would be participating in this reading program, we probably would behoove us to start with who's currently receiving reading assist services. Families hopefully are already aware that their children are receiving those services, and then do an extension into the summer. If they are at PAL, I know PAL and Mr. Purnell, who runs the PAL, we have had some conversations because they support Shortridge Academy with before and after care programming. So if there's already alignment there, then how can we work through, again, accountability through alignment to ensure that we're not having isolated impacts, and ultimately this work is ultimately going to inform the bigger system. So I think probably some gathering of partners to really see almost like an asset mapping. I know we've done some landscape analysis to see where those existing partnerships lie with these programs, and then see how we can just gain some traction and make it a continuation of services rather than something new. Because if we're selling this as something new, families, schools, partners already feel like they have enough going on already, so much more of a continuation of services. And again, to Ms. Montos's point, you know, that partnership with Bulk Milk, and the more you are on it, again, you see positive outcomes, because again, there's no delay or gap in those supports, and whether or not, in many instances, they're growing and catching up, but we're also sustaining and they're not losing, particularly that's number slide, so.
Yes, that's important.
Yeah.
Well,
Did
thank
wanna-
you.
Thank you, Maria. Did you want to reinforce the point about it being a competitive grant?
No, I think I made that point. Maria,
Yes,
if you
I
want
heard
to-
you loud and clear.
I just wanted to tell you, if you want a report from the field, I mentor a student at Lewis Dual Language Elementary, and I was in the office today waiting for him, and the entire office is wallpapered with advertisements for the LACC summer program. So your offerings are being well advertised.
Well, we do a good job, and we know that the kids are keeping their reading levels and improving. And we can prove it with the tests, so. You know, and like Carper says, if it works, do more of it. If it doesn't, get rid of it.
Hi, it's Lisa Lawson. So I first just want to express how much we fully support services, direct services to students, which then benefit families and so on. So a couple of questions. There's an assumption here that JFC is going to approve, obviously, the 10.2, but clearly if something went awry that we weren't expecting, we would have to readjust. A question as to whether potentially Harlan feeder or Harlan resident students who may not be attending Harlan might be eligible for this. So as part of our integration plan, obviously our students don't all attend school in the city, but they reside. So a question as to whether they would be eligible for what we're offering this evening. And then last comment, just to lift up Ayana's comments, I think having the budget list the carryover monetary amount and then the breakdown for what's being paid out of it would be transparent and helpful as we approve the budget, because when we saw that one sheet, it wasn't on there. I think that would be clear what the carryover funds were going towards.
Thank you.
So the question that you asked about students in the feeder pattern is a good question. The way that this is written, the application would come from the school. So the program would be in the school and the student would have to be attending to school. And I guess the student would have to decide at the beginning of the year to attend Harlan rather than choicing into it. You're talking about students who are in the Harlan feeder pattern, but choice into other schools.
They don't choose. They're assigned. They're assigned to 3 schools outside the city.
Yeah.
So Carcroft, Hanby, and Lombardy have students through our integration plans.
Yeah. So for the way that the language-based learning disability program is structured, that would be in a classroom in a school. And I think the assumption is that it would be students who currently attend that school, just because it's such a small program, that it would be filled by students who currently are in the feeder pattern and attend that school. For the gifted program, I think the assumption is that it would be school-based, but students could choice into the school, much like they do in Brandywine now, to take advantage of the program.
Really, the tutoring program is what I was really asking about.
I guess we could do it. I had not given any thought to it, and we could do it either way, and probably should decide which way we wanted to do it, just to give DOE some guidance about how to do it. It's a good question that I hadn't thought about.
Okay. A lot of good discussion. Another hand, all right.
A quick question. I just want to make sure I understand the comment about the Attorney General's office providing legal services under the language-based learning disability program. Is that pro bono, and the value? Okay, so is that 191 come out of the 665?
Yes, so it would be pro bono to the school or school district, but the state would be paying the salary of the Deputy Attorney General who's doing the work. So
So it's not pro bono.
well, I'm not sure I said it was pro bono. It's not charged to the school district. So absent this, a school district that was trying to set this up would need to pay whatever law, each of the school districts have a different private law firm that they use for special education issues. They would need to pay them by the hour to design the program, set it up, and then if someone challenged it in some way, they would have to pay them out of pocket by the hour to deal with that. So what this does is to provide a state-funded attorney to do all of those things. So the school district, when it's deciding whether it wants to take this on or not, doesn't have to consider whether it needs to set aside money in its budget for paying private attorneys to do all that.
So the applicant does not have to set aside the value of that. Is that what you're saying?
They don't need to set aside, they all set aside money in their budgets now for legal expenses. They would not have to add on top of that legal expenses that would be associated with doing this new program because they know that that would be provided free by the state if they incurred it. The best case scenario, it would only be for setting up the program. The hope is that they wouldn't have to pay the money on the back end.
Thank you, that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
The step is,
Yeah. Let's get her steps in.
Good evening, this is Simone Silver. Sorry for my voice. Allergies. For the looking at the out of school reduction, 60% per school cost reduction, is all of that reduction coming from the student health center components?
Not all of it, but a substantial part of it. And that was both for the actual operating costs and then also because there was a desire to not disadvantage schools that didn't have the physical space for a student health center set up yet. Schools were also allowed to apply for using that money for capital funds to set up the physical structure needed for a student health center. So a substantial part of that reduction, yes, is eliminating the student health center. But the other part of it is that when we set this up in 2021, the approach was let's look around the country at every component of an outside school time program that has been successful, and let's try to put them all together. And let's see if we can get outsized results by doing all of these proven positive things in one place. And I think one of the things that we learned over the course of doing the grant is that schools really only have the capacity to manage so many new things at once. So some of the additional programming that we put on, in addition to health centers and in addition to the academic focus, the sense was that it was in many cases just more than schools could absorb. So the other part of the reduction is just narrowing the focus down more specifically to academics, not exclusively, because you can't expect kids after a full day of school to just do more school. But it is structured as proposed very much more with there's a requirement that a full-time teacher, a credentialed teacher be in charge of the program, which wasn't a requirement of the old one, that it be based on a nationally recognized curriculum, which wasn't a requirement of the older program, and that the primary focus be academic. So that's the other part of the reduction is not trying to do all of the things that we were trying to do in the initial run through.
And my last question is there going to be a gap in health services? Will there be a gap there for that reduction?
I don't know. I know at least one of the schools, there were 3 schools that got the original grant. I know that at least one of the schools recently announced that, that it was revamping or continuing its student health center. So potentially, yes, but I know that for at least one of the 3 schools, they're continuing theirs. The second of the 3 schools was Bayard, which had a pre-existing student health center program and was just using this money to augment it. So I would expect that at a minimum, its program would continue as it had been prior to receiving the grant.
I wouldn't make that assumption, but currently the student-based health center is in operation.
Is that Superintendent
Dr. Jordan.
Joyner? Sorry, just to make sure we're making sense. Could you repeat that?
I just said I would not make that assumption that the school-based health center could continue if the grant is not continued.
Okay. Around to see if there's any other hands. And I know we had a lot of discussions, but there were a lot of sort of process, I think, explanations about how the RFA plays out from here. And of course, you know, our spending plan is subject to our, you know, continual review and approval. If we want, we've done this before, unless we were on the table have been here, that we can bring forward adjustments over time if need be. But I think to get us started, we would love to entertain the motion that is still sitting on the table and take a vote on it. So, Matt, final word?
It may not be final.
Oh, okay.
I just want to, I mean, I thought that we might want to in some way, I mean, I think we could tonight in a formal way acknowledge some of the issues that were brought up just so that we were formally recognizing them and putting them, you know, on the list to address at the next meeting, you know, one of them being, you know, the ability of, I mean, I guess it's two-part, the ability of multiple districts to apply for the gifted and talented grant, and then whether there ought to be some, whether it ought to be either a requirement that there be a collaborative application, or that there ought to be points, additional points awarded for collaborative applications. So that's sort of I think it would be helpful for us to have some direction on that one way or the other. And then the second being the issue that that Superintendent Lawson brought up about who would be eligible for the tutoring services. So I think that it would be helpful to at least have as part of the vote what direction we were going with those things, even if we didn't have the fine print worked out.
Madam Chair, I have my hand up.
Oh,
When you show this green, go backward.
okay.
Wait, no.
All right, we're still in discussion. It's all good.
I-
think a couple more
I
comments.
just-
Share them.
Are you calling on me?
Yep.
You know, I agree with every single step. The only one I don't agree with is giving the Attorney General money to hire a deputy Attorney General in case we need it. That I disagree with that. How do we do that? How do we split our vote on that? Or is it all or nothing?
Well, I mean, we don't have to do it. This is Matt Jen. We don't have to do it. I just think that there is a real chance that we won't have anyone who wants to bid on this program if we don't do it, which we won't know until the RFP has been out. So we, you know, effectively we won't be able to pursue it until the following school year. So that's the concern. You know, this deputy, if they're not working on this, will be working on other, you know, other projects for the civil program at the Department of Justice. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
No, I think if I think that if the schools put a grant in for this, they ought to put money set aside there to hire for legal services. I don't think we should give the Attorney General a whole deputy position from these grants that are for I don't know. That's my opinion anyway.
Well, we may just agree to disagree about that.
I know.
So good and civil about it. I know that. Superintendent Green, did you have a comment you wanted to make on the amendment?
Putting in a qualifier for the RFA around points for
Collaboration across LEA.
So I was trying to capture these on the screen as we were
Oh,
talking. I know
thank
they're a
you.
little small for everyone, but, I was just writing, they're not written perfectly, but they just are capturing what we're discussing. Does that look okay? Or give me some language, revisions if like.
The collaborative application, was that meant to be specific to the gifted and talented? We weren't talking about that in all cases. Okay, yeah, I would just specify. Just right
Yeah, again, from my perspective, because we're programming for what's to come, we need to. Because we're programming for what's to come, I think collaboration for me should almost be the given, but that's just.
In all cases.
I think, because I think there's learning through this process, right? Like, how else are we gonna learn? As, my colleague Tika brought up, just in terms of, our itinerant services versus the Brandywine Specialized Autism Program versus whomever is gonna become a part of this consolidation is gonna have to learn from it.
Yeah.
And potentially uphold it, because we're also saying families still access these services. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And even that sort of surprise details, people don't anticipate, like students in the city of Wilmington who are not attending schools that we label as Redding schools. That's an important distinction.
And I think part of the assumption is that they also then attend community-based programs within the communities when, depending on where I fall along market, Al is too far for me to reach, or, based on what we looked at through the AIR, our research in terms of safe passage, Fletcher Brown may not be accessible to me, so now I don't even have access to this program. So I think the more we cross-collaborate, both between districts and partners, to do a lot of these programming, whether that's the reading assist or other programs, I just think, for me, again, personally, I think the more we look at collaboration, the better off. So, but I'm okay with the points.
And I'm realizing, looking at my notes here, that Superintendent Green, I think, had also encouraged points for community partners for the tutoring program as well. That applicants that had a component of the proposal that involved using community partners to reach out to potential participants, which I think we want to do anyway, that they would, that they would get points in their application for that. If I heard you right.
So I have a question now. Does that mean the city of Wilmington has to be an applicant for these funds?
Well, that's kind of the same question it's another version of the question that Superintendent Lawson was asking about how this would work. And I'm not sure that the way that it's written, it really speaks to who the applicant would be. It does say that it should be, that the geographic focus should be the city of Wilmington.
What it says at the top.
The state school district.
Competitive grants for school.
So,
Well, I guess I'm open to suggestions about what's the most efficient way to set it up, given that the geographic focus is students in the city and students attending high poverty schools in particular. What's the best way to organize? We can kind of do it. We can propose to doing it, whatever the most efficient way of doing it is, and maybe address the issue that Lisa brought up at the same time.
I think we are compiling some notes for maybe a new motion and I would also support the idea of the collaborative application being encouraged as a broad consideration. Personally, I think that makes a lot of sense given our work and our context. I think we have a hand raised.
Shall we make these two separate motions?
So finish the motion we have.
Just about the money. And then the other question is being raised around the preference or.
Student details about the RMAs.
Whatever, y'all put the two together.
Yeah. I mean, so there's in the actual, thing that we're voting on, there's some requirements that are already built into the money part. So I guess I was just thinking we would add these to what was already written, but we don't have to.
We've added.
I mean, I don't know that it makes it a ton more complicated as long as we figure out this last issue that came up of how the tutoring ought to work. It has to be, you know, the entities that want to do it have to submit bids to do it. And I guess we could open it to, I mean, we could have them apply to the city and have the city run a competitive grant process for it. We could have DOE run a competitive grant process for it.
For the summer program?
Wouldn't we just take a similar approach like 21st Century though? I mean, there's processes there where the districts are the ones who are the applicants, but the community partner could be the ones that initiate
That's it.
the ask. So there's already existing process. So if the city of Wilmington said for this program, we want to run this program at this particular site with the PAL, who does the PAL serve? It serves Brandywine, it serves Red Clay. So why wouldn't we collectively go in to look at a reading assist program and just, I mean, that process is already there and the department is familiar with it. I don't think we need to read it. Yeah, we don't need to be invented with it. I think we're overthinking it, and I think to the point that we're sitting at the table and we control, this isn't like we're applying for a federal government grant that has all the stipulations, but just structure it the way and just, I think on the back end, to your point, the monitoring of the grants is the key piece, and how the money's been being issued and how we're all collectively accountable to making sure that.
So for purposes of ending this conversation,
Yeah. Representative Poach has been very patient.
if we can say that we want to do it the way that 21st Century grants are currently done, and then we can figure that out as to what exactly that means.
And again, not exactly, but yes, a process similar to collaborative grants.
All right, so for purposes of voting.
Hand online, Ayana Khan. Sorry, Ayana.
Hey, circling back on the Attorney General funding piece. I know Widener Law School is moving to the city. I don't know if the mayor can speak to what sort of funding and contributions they've received and how they're giving back to the city, and if we can potentially collaborate with the law school to just operate more conservatively with this Attorney General funding piece.
Yeah, I mean, the state can commit money, the Attorney General can commit people, and the state can commit money to the Attorney General. The state doesn't have that type of relationship with the law schools. And I don't know what the Attorney General can do is to hire a person with some specific subject matter expertise in this area, which I also don't know that either of we now have 2 law schools in Delaware. I don't know that either of them have people with that kind of specialized expertise. So I'm not sure if that's responsive to the question or not.
Yeah, I think that should be a conversation with the law school, especially since they're moving right downtown Wilmington.
I think that's an interesting idea.
So for purposes of voting, I guess I would amend the motion that I made at the very outset to say that we would add to it a recommendation that for the gifted and talented program and for the tutoring program, that additional points be given for bidders that have a community collaboration element to their proposal, number 1, and number 2, that for the tutoring proposal, that we attempt to use roughly the model that is used now for 21st century funding as a means to efficiently distribute that money, and otherwise that we approve it as it was included in the packet. And to Ray's point, we will have the opportunity down the road if we want to get into more specifics to do that.
I just want to make sure that the recommendation and the record reflects that this will enable us to use some of this money to expand existing programs, the pilots that we ran last year through Hicks Anderson Community Center, and North Market Street PAL. They obviously, it's just the summer program, it doesn't include the after-school program part of it.
I don't know enough about how those programs work. I mean, are they, if they're consistent with, if it's a 20, if it fits into the model of 28 weeks during the year and 5 weeks during the summer, then yeah. I mean, nobody would be
Just want the
disadvantaged.
record to reflect.
Okay,
Legislative intent.
so I don't know if anyone wants, with the mayor's clarification, I don't know if anyone wants to second.
Second.
Conversation? Oh,
Just the clarification is.
Aligning for the carryover.
Oh, and so Superintendent Lawson was just asking, so what's your, about the carryover, you're asking,
Add a line item to be transparent about how we're spending that.
We want the budget summary to be complete and not just on new operating
Yes.
expenditures.
Yes.
I think we can do that. We want the budget to be complete and reflect all the funds that are in place, including carryover. What we have in this document right now is just how are we spending the new 10.2? And we sort of buried in the summaries all the carryover. So it's like, how do we reflect that in line item? I think
Got it.
that's very fair request.
So moved, Darrell Green. I hope IPA captured all of it.
So moved. And who was the second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion from Superintendent Darrell Green and a second from Mayor John Carney, and I think we can go ahead and go through our vote to approve that motion to approve the spending plan with revisions noted.
Aaron Bass.
Can you say that again?
Aye, yes, yes.
Ayana Khan. I'll come back. Simone Silver.
Yes.
Janine Clark for Danny, well, no, just Janine Clark, sorry.
I'm gonna abstain.
Superintendent Joyner,
Yes.
Superintendent Green,
Yes.
Senator Buxton, Superintendent Menzer,
Yes.
Mayor John Carney,
Yes.
Superintendent Jones,
Yes.
Kendra Brown,
Yes.
Superintendent Lawson,
Yes.
Margie Lopez Waite,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cabrera, Maria Matos,
Yes.
Matt Den,
Yes.
Representative Chapocha,
Yes.
Ray Jones Avery,
Yes.
Ray Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Stephanie Ingram, Ron Williams. He might be in the bathroom. No, sorry. Inga Hartsock,
Yeah.
We have a school dance.
Senator Lockman,
Yes.
and I'll go back, Ayana Khan.
I'm sorry, yes.
No problem, thank you. That was 18 yes and 1 abstention. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. All right, good conversation. I really appreciate everyone's engagement on that. And now we're going to go back to the what's number 3 on your agenda. So the redistricting planning process update. I believe Representative Chapocha is in a good spot. He will be leading us through this. And so Representative Chapocha, can you hear me? There it is, folks. Okay, give us just a minute here to make sure we are in place.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll just have to get to the screen. I can't see the screen right now. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. My apologies for not being able to be there in person. But wanted to provide an update on our redistricting work in terms of beginning with our executive committee. So as a quick recap, as many of us know, at our March meeting, we had moved forward with a structure to help us with the development of our plan. And we created the advisory committee as well as the executive committee. And with them, it was devised so that we could help provide structure for the research and the technical work for the plan's development, as well as developing an enhanced communication structure that will help us with our communication and mainly toward community engagement, a very targeted approach, one that truly embeds the community engagement throughout our planning process. And this shows the organizational chart and how the executive committee and advisory committee will be working, and really gives a picture of our flow of operation. If you start there with Redding itself and then work around working with the research and technical capacity of AIR, the IPA, and DSU, and then that work in coming from them toward the executive committee as well as our subcommittees, and that workflow flowing between them, as well as bringing in the advisory and subject matter experts, and then the recommendations going back to the executive committee. And in between there is also the community engagement, which you'll see again ongoing throughout the process is community engagement for refinement. And then the recommendations would lead from the executive committee and be forwarded to the full body for voting and approval. So that's the workflow that the chart outlines. In terms of the executive committee, we held our first orientation meeting on the 17th. And we just went over our norms, expectations, and some of our roles and responsibilities, our timeline, which we'll go over, and also our communications. Again, I can't highlight enough about community engagement and how we really see that as being a key principle throughout the process. I think some of the focus areas for us was ensuring that regardless of trying to do the right thing in terms of for our children, keeping the needs of our children central, regardless of politics, and staying Wilmington centered, and remembering what all of this is about, our work and just the needs of our students, and the decades long struggle that we've been a part of, and that this is just the next phase of it, and continuing to understand that. And again, our work with the executive committee, as well as our subcommittees and our subject matter experts, really helping to develop the plan and then having that engagement with the community. But I think overall, the sense is that, I mean, this is really all of us. This is going to take all of us to develop this plan. And that's really like the focus of this step, is to bring everything together. Of course, our core mandate has to do with the 13 stipulations, as we all know, outlined in code for us for our plans development. And that is really what we're considering to be the base. And we know that going beyond the 13 stipulations is really is what's going to have to take us to be successful in terms of our broader policy reforms that go along with it. So when you think about again, our 13 stipulations being the baseline, or base from which we're starting our planning process from, and then going from there, realizing, as we've said many times within this body, that just changing the district lines or the boundaries won't do anything, but it's really about broader policy reforms that support the work that we're trying to implement through our plan. and that realizing that for everything we're trying to do in terms of the longstanding needs for educational equity and to improve the outcomes for the city of Wilmington students and those within broader Newcastle County. As you'll see in the next couple of slides, as we begin to talk about our sequencing, the 13 stipulations have been blocked or grouped together in terms of our working plan. And it's built that way to keep the subcommittees engaged in the process, as well as allowing that continuous opportunity for community engagement and feedback during the plan's refinement. And also working with the Redding leadership to really tailor our messages. We know our plan and the implementation of our plan, even the design of our plan, will impact many communities. So we really have to have that appropriate messaging for those communities and to ensure that they feel that their voices are being heard and that they are seen, that their concerns are seen within our plan and our plan's development. And then this is where our workflow is being broken down into these four main categories that really outlines our plan's development process. So you start on number one, which was the learning plan, and that's really key to where IPA, DSU, and AIR will work with the executive committee and our subject matter experts, and they begin to answer those key questions that we need to have answered to begin our process in terms of our direction. We gather the research and best practices. And then the third step will be to, again, bring in local and national subject matter experts to help with the refinement at this stage. And as we begin to select the potential options in order for our plan's development. And from there, we have the committee review briefs that will be presented from AIR toward the executive committee, and we'll work with the subcommittees in each of the subcommittees, the leads and facilitators in the second stage will begin to review those briefs. And the subcommittee will have working sessions to begin to develop, and this is that stage of the plan's development. And then from there, it goes back to the executive committee where we begin to approve those working briefs. And at that stage as well is also when we begin that community engagement section. And we move into the third section where we hear from our community. And that community engagement is with everyone from elected officials, our school boards, parents, communities, nonprofits, the business community, all of the stakeholders who will be ultimately impacted or play a role within our plan's implementation. We plan to hold both in-person and virtual feedback sessions to gather feedback and hear from our community, ensure again that their voices are heard and are reflected in our plan as is presented forward. And then we move into the fourth phase, which is where we approve and then make our final decisions with our research, and where we would draft the plan, and then ultimately the recommendations would go to the full body for approval. And then we would vote on it. And then this is summarized on the next slide is our timeline, and basically broken down into the three columns. And you see the first column being the phase going all the way from where we did our kickoff for the executive committee all the way down to the ending line where we have the final presentation or recommendations. And then the second column are basically the 13 stipulations as they are blocked together in the working groups. And then the third column, you see each of the four stages that were just outlined on the last slide there. And it's showing, again, how we begin from one phase of developing and research all the way through to the recommendations. So it's for each one of the block areas, you go through each one of the four stages. And again, that includes the community engagement from the development all the way through to the recommendation of being presented to the full body for approval. So that's the overview of our planning process for our plans that development. And again, I know Trent's online. If there are any additional questions, but that's the outline that we've developed, and really the timeline. I think that really shows some lessons learned, and especially in key in terms of community engagement and trying to ensure that the community's voice from our various communities are heard and are represented in our final plan that we develop. So,
Thank you. Okay. So I think everyone who's here in person has a copy of those last two slides about those 4 phases. And then obviously the one that you can sort of see on the screen now. If you have that in your hand, you can see the sort of large categorical groupings that capture both the 13 stipulations where they fit into the timeline and work plan, as well as a number of items that have emerged from like our discretionary and sort of big ideas, recommended actions that have come throughout our process over the last 18 to 24 months that you see alongside those. But I believe it's the bold ones, which are the stipulations, that are like the core fundamentals that are the priority throughout this process. So a lot of work in the past couple months has gone into crafting this, understanding like the scope of what we have taken on, and wanting to make sure that we do justice to delivering on our promises here. And so for folks wondering at any given time, sort of what is the consortium actually doing right now, I could hope this will give something like an answer. So does anyone have any comments or questions on Representative Chakwocha's presentation? Mayor? Namika, you can hang on and answer any questions.
Yeah, I see the end date here is February 15th, assume next year, but it doesn't include the approval after that. Are we going to develop a timeline for that, the final approval? And is this group taking a look at that as well?
Representative Chakwocha, did you want to respond to that?
I didn't hear all of it. It was asking what happened beyond February. Was that the question?
Basically, like what about the plan moving from what we see here?
Yes. Yeah. So once it's approved, so we have our final, and then our body approves it. Then again, it will be our job to get it to the state board, and the state board will have again that review period, and then it will hopefully be up to the senator or I to do our work in the General Assembly.
Yeah, so if we adhere to this, that's the February 15th submission to the state board, essentially, once approved.
Just an observation, it's tight, June 30th.
Yeah.
State board the 90th.
Just for folks online who can't hear it, but I just wanted to, Ray Jones Avery was noting the 90-day review period that the state board has to potentially approve and advance the proposal to the General Assembly for its consideration.
Ma'am, they just sent this in advance. They have this electronically.
Yes, that's true. Everyone on the consortium has this electronically. It is also posted to solutionsfordelawareschools.com with all of the meeting materials for today's meeting. For anyone who's following along and maybe wanting to be able to like zoom in on this thing, you can grab it there and do that and read through all of the individual areas that will be being worked through over this upcoming, 9 months or so. Any other comments or questions?
No,
Superintendent Green?
there was extensive discussion today at Bond Bill among some of the bond committee members around capital, and Redding did come up. So specifically, stipulation 5 came up just around the distribution of capital assets. Stipulation 10, and then stipulation 3. And although the department wasn't able to obviously speak to Redding,
Sure.
but in my notes, those were the stipulations that aligned, I think, to some of the discussions that the bond committee was interested in learning more about. So I'm sure Secretary Mark and Brian Ray from DOE may be reaching out just to get clarification as they get back to the bond committee.
Okay. Great flag, thank you for that. Superintendent Lawson?
I just have a question as to whether minutes from the executive committee meeting and or an advisory committee, if it's formed, if they will be posted for public consumption.
Yes, yeah, these are obviously FOIA compliant bodies. I think the executive committee, absolutely. We've also had a lot of discussions about sort of the advisory piece that we approved in that document and what form that might take. And so I would say that part is more evolving. I think we're looking at that perhaps more as a bench of subject matter experts with whom the executive committee would consult, by bringing into their, FOIA compliant meetings. So just a note there that we still very much value what we outlined about an advisory entity, but we're trying to make sure that we're not bogging ourselves down on a tight timeline with like a committee that has to meet as a whole. We're looking at that more as a group of subject matter experts that will be sort of utilized as needed. I think if you saw the structure that was up there by the consortium as a whole, as well as the executive committee.
Senator Lockman, can I just add?
Yes.
The executive committee materials are posted on the website.
Oh, thank you.
Now.
Minutes, yeah.
Oh,
Well, they probably haven't been able, they've only met once.
Right, I haven't been approved any minutes. Oh, true. Good point. And yes, they definitely will be.
There's a recording is already posted is it posted to the website? And the YouTube channel. So we do have recordings of how the April 17th meeting proceeded on our YouTube channel, and it sounds like that's cross-posted to the solutionsfordelawareschools.com meeting materials area as well. We do work really hard. Well, our team, our IPA DSU team works very hard to make sure that we are super transparent and we hope that we're delivering on that. So always open to feedback. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Representative Chicocha. I think that this also should make it very clear that you can expect to be hearing a lot about meetings of the entities to align with all of this work that's mapped out here. So of course, do stay tuned on our website, and all of our meetings are posted to the public meeting calendar as well. I guess people can sign up for a mailing list, would they receive meeting notifications through that, or is, okay. And there's an opportunity to do that on the website as well.
Yep.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure people are able to stay in the loop. Because all of these moving parts are going to start moving and it might become a little harder to track at that point. With nothing further, thank you, Representative Chicocha, for your work on this, and thank you to the AIR team as well, of course, and to our IPA and DSU team for getting us to this point where the rubber can start to meet the road. The next item on our agenda is actually just kind of a new piece we wanted to put there regularly. I think we wanted to make sure we gave an opportunity to all consortium members to surface any new business that you think needs to be a consideration on our agenda. So that's what this is for. I don't think we actually have anyone specifically intending to speak up, but this is your opportunity, consortium members, before we move to public comment, to flag anything for us to be working on before our next full body meeting. Anybody? Okay. Everyone's looking at that clock. Nobody online? Okay. So with that, we can move into public comment. And we do have a 2-minute allowance per speaker. I don't know if we have like a sign-up sheet that's already established.
We do.
Great.
I think most people used it. Like I don't think.
So maybe a last call to put your name on that
I don't think
sheet.
John and Jim meant to sign.
Oh.
But I think
John did not need to do that. So we are gonna cross that out.
So we've got Bill Doolittle and then Dee Hawkins online if she would still like to give public comment.
Great.
Noted earlier.
All right, well, I'll just note that again, last call for anyone else who's here in the room with us or online to make it clear with a raise of a hand or a comment in the chat that you would like to offer public comment of 2 minutes or less. Welcome, Bill Doolittle.
Thank you. Bill Doolittle, I'm speaking tonight as a volunteer advocate for children with disabilities, their children at risk. I wanted to first, I have 2 points. First, I want to try to provide some comfort to LEAs who are considering the reading-based program and doing that.
Right into the mic, please.
Sorry, reading-based program and considering that. This is something that's not done in Delaware now. This is a new program. Yes, it's needed statewide, but any progress forward with this is good progress. So know that while it may not be able to design perfectly to every technical specification of IDEA, the community backs this. We want it because it needs to move statewide quickly. So if there's a risk, it's probably the districts that don't do this that are going to be at risk. And the real risk is to the SEA, who, quite honestly, the requirement of IDEA, you have to continue services and environments. And this is one of those components, one of 50 that Delaware probably doesn't have now. So it's really the SEA that is going to get called to the carpet on this eventually, not the districts, because it is a statewide. Second was that the extended programming, back to it, it talked about academics, and this is probably true of the gifted program and even the language-based learning program. That doesn't mean that other students' needs are not addressed in that setting if they're students with disabilities. It's still required under IDEA. You know, just because the core curriculum is academic doesn't mean that functional curriculum, social skills, or executive function aren't addressed in that setting. It's required under IDEA for student with disabilities, and students with disabilities can't be excluded. So just so everybody knows the landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next from online is Dee Hawkins. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, good evening. I'm calling, I'm tuning in and listening to all of this. There's a lot that is, that I hope would be made clear. And I know that, Dr. Green had talked about, accountability in the program through alignment. I'd like to get a little more clarification and explanation on how do we get accountability in the program through alignment. And, Mr. Carney had mentioned it's hard to get kids to show up for different programs. I want to make sure that we're not making excuses and we do have accountability. These programs are attached to high costs. And I noticed, for example, the $665,000 is a huge amount on that item list for an attempt to provide language-based assistance. What measures will be in place to determine those goals and measures for the success of the program? And then for the programs, who are the students that will attend and how many students will qualify? How many will be serviced? And then I also wanted to see if we could get, how does the budget break down, the $10.2 million budget compared to the funding formula for the cost per pupil student per year? So those were just some of the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Lisa. Oh, can you just state your full name? See if Lisa F. Yeah, state just for the public record. If you're still want to give public comment.
Yes, Lisa Rice.
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just feel ill-prepared. I wanted to remind everyone that this began to serve disadvantaged and disabled students. Disadvantaged students were considered low income or English learner, and additionally disabled. I'm becoming confused with the language-based disability. Does that mean English learner, or is that a literacy term? I don't want us to forget children with disabilities. And to me, it doesn't matter if science says that they should be taught in the same setting. They were still underserved. And that's why we all got here today. I just want to remind everyone of that, and that Delaware has close to 200 high poverty schools, Title I schools. And it breaks my heart in front of you right this second to think that we're going to underserve these disabled kids again because of geography. So that is my reminder and my request. I'm sorry, I'm breaking down. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much. I apologize.
Melanie, thank you very much for your comment. Did we have anyone else volunteering? Okay. Wonderful. Thank you everyone who took the time to attend, to listen in, especially those of you who opted to comment. Before we close out, I did want to recognize that we did have some board members in the room. We have Susan Sander from Red Clay, and we have Monica Morak from Christina here, and we did have John Sheehan, the president of our state board. So I just did not want to close out without acknowledging your participation. Thank you very much. It's appreciated. Okay, I think that's it. So do we have a next steps slide? I think the next steps are kind of in that big old chart. So thank you so much and stay tuned. Lots of work starting now.
So moved.
That's right. All right.
So-
Adjourn.